Afternoon. Eric here with Everyday Arts and DIY. Today I'll be doing a valve adjustment on my 2016 Honda HR-V. It's sitting at 211,000 miles right now. I do the valve adjustment every 100,000 miles. Um, Same thing as the R18C engine that's in the Honda Civic. There are a couple of things about this car that make it a little bit easier to do the valve adjustment on this one as opposed to the Civic. So I'll be getting that started. I have the car sitting overnight. Has to be done on a cold engine. Uh, you can remove the passenger side front tire. You don't need to. If you turn the wheel full lock to the right, it gives you enough room to get to the crankshaft pulley, and you can do the adjustment without. So I'm lazy and want to do as little removal of stuff as possible. And we will get started. Okay, so there are just a few things that you have to remove to get started. We're going to remove the negative cable for the battery first because we need to remove the, if I can tip this forward so you guys can see it a little bit better. We have to remove the positive post and these two clips off of the alternator so that we can flip this wiring harness out of the way. The first thing I'm going to do is remove these. These are just two plastic clips that hold this little cover piece on. So you just turn those. And I'm always super careful with these because this engine's got 211,000 miles. I really baby these plastic pieces because I don't want them to snap off. And you'll just kind of rock this forward and then tilt this cover piece forward to clear the little tabs and then just kind of flip it out of the way. These are all 10mm bolts that you have to loosen. I'm going to go ahead and pop the wiring harnesses off the coil packs. And I'm just going to pull this one out of the way, this little tab right here. Let me get in here again and see if I can get a better view of this. You just push this little tab back and then pull up, which is easier said than done one-handed. Okay, I think the little tab broke off. Let me go get a screwdriver. Okay, so it turns out that the tab was not broken. I just couldn't see what I was doing because I didn't have my reading glasses on. So you just pull this little tab back and just pull this up. Let me just get that out of the way. And let me go grab my 10mm ratchet. Not knock over my tripod. So I'm just gonna and when I put these back on, I just kind of torque them down to about 11 pound-feet, just enough to hold them in place. That's just kind of my generic go-to. And the HR-V has this nice little tray up here that is closed off on both ends, so I put all of my little bolts in here because they're pretty stable. They don't go anywhere. On the if you've ever done this on a Civic, there's not enough clearance between here and here. There's a whole cowl piece you have to remove. Not so with the HR-V. Much easier to get to everything. And I'm just gonna loosen the 10mm bolts on these coil packs. Now, had I been thinking ahead, I would have ordered my laser iridium spark plugs and done the spark plug replacement while I had them out of here. but I had a lot of crap going on last week, so I didn't think about that. I also usually do this about a week before I do an oil change, just in case there's any debris or anything that falls into the engine while you're doing this. I usually, and that's something that was an old school mechanic that I used to work with. Anytime he did any work on the engine internals, he would do an oil change a couple of days after to clear out any debris that may have fallen into the engine. And again, on this little cowl here, I'm just putting the coil packs in order. 4, 3, 2, and then 1 is going to go right here, just so I can keep track of which ones are which. Not that it would do anything if you got the wrong coil pack on the wrong cylinder, but try to keep things as consistent as possible. And while I've been running my mouth, I completely forgot to disconnect the negative cable on the battery. So I'm going to come over here and do that now. And over the years, I've kind of tilted this up a little bit to make it easier to get the ratchet in here. It's probably not the best thing for the negative post, but it makes it easier. So there we go. Just going to flip this out of the way and stick it back behind here, behind the headlight, so it doesn't accidentally flip over and make contact while I'm in the middle of doing this. Next up is removing these two 10mm bolts. This one, and make sure I get this in camera right here. This one back here. And then you can flip that back. I'm just going to put these bolts right back where they were. I am not wild about these plastic valve covers, but what you're going to do. Okay. And this is going to stay out of the way enough I think I'm going to get a zip tie and just push this down. This is the for the injectors, and I don't want to disconnect all the injectors because these little mounting tabs have only so many pulls on them before the plastic gets brittle and breaks. So I try to do as little removal of these as possible, but I want this to be out of the way. So I think I'm just going to get a zip tie and just kind of zip tie it to this vacuum hose right here. Just, it's not, I mean, maybe just 1 pound of pressure that's needed to hold that out of the way. I tried to get the camera in a little bit better position so you guys could see this. Another, you guessed it, 10mm bolt right here. So now that we've disconnected the negative cable for the battery, we can safely this bolt. Being super careful to finger loosen this so you don't accidentally drop it. And then I'm just going to put the bolt right back up here so I know exactly where it is when I need to go put it back. And I'm just going to disconnect these two, and then this little harness will flip out of the way. Just push this back. It's got a little mounting tab. I don't know how well you can see that from where I am. Let me see if I can get a better, yeah. So it's got a little mounting tab right here. If you just slide this back, it'll clear that mounting tab. There we go. There we go. That right there. That right there. And then you can just flip this whole harness out of the way. And again, I'm trying to put this forward a little bit so it doesn't go anywhere near the battery and accidentally make contact. Sorry if this is a little Blair Witch project with the filming here. So I used the wimpiest little zip ties that I had here, and I'm just going to feed this underneath this vacuum hose. I really don't want to put a lot of pressure on the vacuum hose, but like I said, it's only maybe 1 pound. And we're not going to have this out for long enough. And then I left enough play so that I can easily get a pair of snips in here and just cut this when I'm done, so I can put everything back the way it was. And well, I'm just going to put these 2 bolts back here. Okay, and there is quite a bit of grit on the top of this valve cover, so I'm just going to get the shop vac and clean that up before I go any further. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Those of you who watch my videos before, you know how much I love to count. 8 more 10mm bolts, and this vacuum line right here that I'm just going to pull off right now. And the valve cover just lifts straight up. Now I feel a little bit better about removing the valve cover. Okay, so there it is, 10mm bolt. And I probably don't need to say this, but I'm going to anyway. When I loosen these, I just go straight down the line. When I tighten them back down, I will do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and that cross pattern. Just because every mechanic that I've ever known through the years has recommended that you do it that way, you get the best tightening and most even distribution of the pressure. It's probably so nominal that it really doesn't matter, but it's one of those things that doesn't cost you anything to do it that way, so why not? Okay, lift these bolts up. Before I lift this off, I'm going to go get a piece of aluminum foil to set this valve cover on so that I get a nice seal and I don't get any debris on the gasket. Again, you should probably change the gasket when you're doing this, but again, I didn't think ahead, and this is easy enough to do where if I have to change the valve cover gasket later, I will. I don't see any evidence of leaking around the valve cover gasket, so I'm not going to worry about it. I've recently implemented a bunch of changes at work, and it's been taking up a lot of my time, which for those of you keen observers who have looked at my garage, it is a total disaster area. I need to get back in here and get some cleaning up and organizing because it is embarrassing. Okay, I'm just going to pause this for a second while I get really, you guys know how to loosen bolts. And also remove the dipstick. So I'm gonna wrap this in a paper towel and go put it over on my workbench so it doesn't get anything. And valve cover, once the bolts are loosened, should come up pretty easy. I just usually kind of rock it forward and backward. This time it came up on the first try. So I do have some Honda Bond. So I'm going to try to get away with reusing this gasket. There we go. The gasket looks great. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean the mating surface of the valve cover gasket, and I'm going to leave the gasket right there. I'm just going to be super careful when I do the adjustment to make sure that I don't touch the gasket. But I mean, that looks really great. Um, and I just want to pat myself on the back here a little bit. Uh, look how clean the valve train is. This is what I change my oil religiously every 4,000 miles. I use AMSOIL full synthetic. 211,000 miles. It looks brand new. And inside of the valve cover gasket. So I'm just going to go set this down on a piece of aluminum foil, and I'll see you over at my workbench. So as promised, here's my valve cover sitting on a nice clean piece of aluminum foil. Printed out the valve lash. I've got these already marked off on my little feeler gauges. So intake is 0.8 to 0.22 millimeters, 0.007 to 0.009 inches for intake. So I go right in the middle and use 0.008 or 0.203 millimeters. And for exhaust, 0.23 to 0.27 millimeters, 0.009 to 0.011 inches. And again, right in the middle at 0.010 inches, 0.254 millimeters. And I just use the feeler gauges like this. I just find them a little easier to manipulate and get in and out of there. And I bought this unnecessary thing off of Amazon. You can use a box end wrench and a screwdriver. This just combines the two and makes it marginally easier. I think I paid $19 for this. It is helpful. Completely unnecessary, but I bought it, so I'm going to use it. So I wanted to get down here on the floor, and I am surprised at how much the daylight is letting you guys see what's going on here. So as you can see, the tire is still on the car. There's the access bolt for the crankshaft pulley, 19 millimeter socket. Just my ratchet just fits right in there. And with the HRV, there's really no reason for you to remove the wheel because there's plenty of room for you to get in here and do what you need to do. It does not require a whole lot of force to rotate the engine. This works just fine. And my reach is long enough where I can even be up at the top of the engine, reach down, grab the ratchet, and make adjustments to get the cylinder at top dead center. Do not adjust a valve unless the cylinder is at top dead center. I'm going to try to get this in here the best I can so that you can see the registration mark on the pulley. Well, I am not doing a great job at this. Here we go. I don't know how well that is focusing, but we just by sheer serendipity have cylinder number 4 at top dead center. So that's where I'm going to start. I'm going to start with cylinder number 4 and do the adjustment for that since we're already there. That's really bad. I'm trying to get a better angle so you guys can see it. Yeah, that's a little bit better. Okay, so that's 4. First cylinder number 1, I believe, just says up, and then 2, 3, and 4 are numbered like that. And again, because I am selecting to keep the valve cover gasket in place, I'm just going to be very careful working around it. So starting with the exhaust side first, I have my little thing in place. This is, again, it's the same thing as a wrench and a screwdriver. It's just combined in one, so it just makes it marginally easier. So I'm going to get that over that nut, and then I'm just going to loosen that. Let me make sure I have this right, seated the right way. Okay. All right. I just want to make sure I don't strip anything. It's going to go right here. Okay. So you loosen that nut first, and then you can adjust that valve lash up and down as you need to. So I'm going to use my 0.25 millimeter feeler gauge. I'm going to get that in there. And you're just looking for slight drag. So right there. And on Honda engines, it's better to leave the exhaust side a little loose. Honda engines, the exhaust valves tend to tighten over time, and they will, the intake valves loosen like every other engine, but for some reason on Hondas, the exhaust valves tend to tighten over time. So it's better to leave them a little loose. There was another YouTuber, I think it was Eric the Car Guy, who said it's better to hear it than to smell it, and that's with Honda engines, that's exactly true. So just, I don't know if you can see, I don't know how well you can see this, but it is just a slight little bit of resistance, and I'm just going to give it just a quarter of a turn. Not even a quarter of a turn, just a fraction. Okay. And that is too much. Okay, so I've gone too far. So you just want a little bit, you just want to feel it grab just a little bit. And then I usually just put the palm of my hand right here and then tighten this back down. Then I will torque these to 17 pound-feet, but right now I'm just locking it in so it doesn't move. Okay, very good. And that was almost not off at all. Like I almost didn't need to adjust that one. Yeah. Okay, now this one's a little tight, so this one definitely needs to be adjusted because that one is definitely a little tighter than it should be. Just loosen that nut. There we go. Just a little bit of resistance there. And again, I'm just going to hold that so the nut, the little screw doesn't move while I tighten this bolt. Or nut, not bolt. Okay. And I'll tell you what, that one feels a little too loose. I think I loosened that one a little bit too much, so I'm going to go back and redo that one. I'm just going to loosen this again. I'm just going to tighten that just a hair. Okay, that feels better. And be sure when you're doing this that you don't twist the feeler gauge. Don't twist it. Make sure that it's perfectly flat. Don't put any force behind it. You're just grabbing it and just sliding it back and forth just ever so slightly. And that's much better. Okay, so I'm going to lock that in. Yeah, there we go. Just slight resistance. Okay. And then over to the intake side. And that is perfect. And that's perfect. So the intake side doesn't even need to be adjusted because it is already right where it needs to be. Once the valves are set, I come back with my torque wrench and just make sure that they're torqued down. I have it set to 17. Okay. And it is a clicker style wrench, and it did click. It just didn't, I felt it, I didn't hear it. And actually, I've been saying 17, it's actually 11. So please strike that from my previous comments. Yeah. Okay, I was just backing it down to make sure I had it set right. Yes, it is 11. Okay. There we go. 11. Sorry about that. I had that in my head from when I said that earlier with the bolts for the valve cover. And then I'm going to go back in and just check to make sure that nothing has shifted, that everything is still the way that it's supposed to be. Those, yes. And perfect. Okay. That's good. Now I'm going to go on to the next cylinder. And I'm not going to go through step by step through all 4 cylinders because once you've seen one, you've seen them all. But I'm just going to go and rotate and get to the next cylinder. And next up is lucky cylinder number 2. So we're going to do that one next. And I'm going to start with the exhaust side again because nothing is not consistent. And again, it's not going to get any better than that. Okay, this one's tightened down. That one's tightened down quite a bit. So let me just loosen that one. And tighten that one down just a touch. Probably a little bit too much. There we go. All right. Okay. Just double check that. Perfect. And again, that's my 0.25 millimeter for the exhaust. And I'm going to go back here and check the intake. Okay, that one's actually a little bit loose. That one's fine, but I'm in here. It's probably fine, but I'm in here, so I'm going to tighten it down anyway. Okay. Yeah. There. Okay. Oop, that's too much. Okay, that's perfect. All right, and again, I'm just putting a little bit of pressure on the screwdriver so the screwdriver does not move while I'm tightening that bolt. Nut, keep making that mistake. Okay, that's perfect. Torque that to 11 pound-feet. Boop. Perfect. And then this one's probably okay, but like I said, I'm in here, so I'm going to do it anyway. Okay. And on the intake side, it's okay to get them a little bit tighter. I just leave them a little bit looser on the exhaust side because I know that is. I've been working on Honda engines for 15 years, and that's something that is a quirk with those exhaust valves tend to tighten over time. Okay, so that's probably a little snug on that second intake bolt, but I'm going to leave it. All right. And I just wanted to show you guys right here. I don't know if you can see where it says up. That is cylinder number 1 at top dead center. I'm going to go ahead and do that adjustment. And I will do this one, and then by process of elimination, number 3. And I will see you guys when I'm ready to put everything back together. My phone battery is getting ready to die, so I'm going to wrap this up. I've put the valve cover back in place. I just kind of carefully lowered it back over the gasket. The reason I'm taking a lot of shortcuts today is because I have to get up to Gainesville this afternoon to take care of something early tomorrow morning. So I'm trying to get this done. That's why I didn't remove the spark plugs, which I should have. You don't absolutely have to, but it does make the engine turn a little bit easier when you're going through the cylinders. And I didn't remove the valve cover gasket, which I should have, and replaced it. But I got it back in. I had to be very careful when I lowered the valve cover gasket back on to make sure that I didn't pinch the gasket and that everything fit the way that it should. And now I'm just dropping the bolts back in, and I'm going to tighten them down finger tight. And like I said earlier, when I torque these down, I'm just going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, just across to each side, just to make sure I get even distribution. And I'm going to snip my zip tie here and just put everything back the way it was. The alternator, hook that back up, put the negative post back on the cable, and then reset all my radio stations and everything. So if you have any questions, please put it in the comments, but I've got like 10% battery life left, so I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you guys for watching. Please like or subscribe if you find this helpful. I've had at least one person ask for more content, and I have more things coming as they become available. They've recently changed. I work in home healthcare, and we've recently had a bunch of changes at our company that's been taking a lot of my time. So, but you know what? Pays the bills. So you guys have a great day, and I will see you again.